everyone, it is story time at sea today. I've got a couple of stories to share with you from the Bible, both which are about when people were out on the sea sailing, but when it wasn't quite as calm and nice as this. I'm just kind of chilling, bobbing around here. But when things got kind of crazy and really stormy and terrifying for the people in the boat, and both of them involve Jesus and his disciples. This was when Jesus was traveling around telling people about the kingdom of God and about God's love and how to follow him, and he got a lot of attention. He had like thousands of people following him who wanted to hear what he had to say. He was like a celebrity. But then he had a few really close friends who didn't just like follow him from afar, but like did life with him and with him every day, traveling around with him, eating with him. And they were the 12 disciples, and these guys lived next to a massive lake, a lake so big that they just called it a sea, the Sea of Galilee, because it was that big. And they used to jump on boats to get from like one town to another. Some of the disciples were fishermen, so they were like really experienced sailors, and were always going on boats, and they would often jump on a boat to get somewhere else. But one day when they were heading somewhere new, a huge terrifying storm rose up all around them, like crazy, like nothing like you'd find on the ferry over to the mainland. We're talking waves like going way over the top of the boat, just like knocking you over, the wind shaking everything, the whole boat is creaking. Like they were terrified. They literally thought they were not going to make it out of there. Like, this is it, worst storm we've ever seen, we're not going to make it. But in the middle of all this, Jesus is there asleep, and so they go and wake him up, and they're like, Jesus, there's a crazy storm, we're going to die. And Jesus speaks to the storm and says, be still. And the storm goes away. The waves settle down to nice and calm like this, the wind dies down, and the storm goes away. And his friends are kind of like, what just happened? But also they're like, phew, like we made it through. That was like the worst storm ever, but Jesus came and now we're okay. Like, Jesus, you have saved us. We were all going to die. You are incredible. You've taken away this horrible situation, and now we're okay. And that is one really cool story. And I think life can often be like that life can be really hard. It can feel like there is a lot of scary stuff going on around us. We don't really know what to do. And in those moments, we can bring that stuff to Jesus and say, Jesus, this is really hard. I am terrified. I'm not sure how I'm going to make it through this. You know, there is this thing at school, this relationship, this thing that I'm really scared of. I need your help. And he, because he is God and he is powerful, he can change those situations and change them for good, so that thing is gone, and bring us and take away our fear in that way. And that is amazing, and I am so grateful for the times that God has changed really hard situations around me for good. But it's not always like that. There's another story in the Bible where the disciples are actually in the boat without Jesus, and again a storm rises up around them, and again the waves are hitting against the side of the boat, the wind is coming through, they are like trying to keep the boat from tipping over. And in the middle of this, someone is like watching out over the sea at all the crazy waves, and they see someone walking towards them on the water. And I think at first they think they're going crazy, and they're like, it's a ghost, like coming to see us. It was probably so terrifying they just didn't even know what to think. But then actually someone says, no, that's not a ghost, that's Jesus. Like, they recognize him, and it's Jesus, and he is walking on the water towards them. And Peter, who was one of Jesus's closest friends, one of the disciples, who he was one of the fishermen, he sees Jesus and he's like, Jesus, if that's you, like, tell me to come to you and walk on the water as well. And Jesus says, okay, yeah, come step out of the boat and walk. And Peter does that. In the middle of the storm, in the waves and the wind around him, he steps out of the boat and walks on the water towards Jesus. He fixes his eyes on his friend who he knows loves him, who he can trust, and he's able to do like this ridiculous, bold, courageous thing that he totally wouldn't have been able to do if Jesus wasn't there. And I love this story because Peter is able to be unafraid and full of courage, even though his circumstances haven't changed. Like, the storm is still going all about him, but he just fixes his eyes on Jesus and says, I trust you. Actually, I don't need to be afraid. You know what you're doing. And sometimes life is more like that. Situations can be really, really hard, and we may not see a way out. We may not feel like we know what to do. We can feel really powerless. But Jesus just asks us, he says, will you trust me? Will you fix your eyes on me, on what I am telling you to do, on the promises I've given you, that I'm going to look after you, that if you follow my ways, actually life's going to be good. I'm going to look after you. And that's what Peter does in that situation. And that can be so hard in real life to actually do, because of all the crazy situations we find ourselves in. And actually, in that story in the Bible, as Peter is walking on the water, he becomes distracted by the things around him, by the wind and these massive waves coming towards him. And he takes his eyes off Jesus and focuses on how scary his circumstances are. And when that happens, he actually starts to sink into the sea, and he's not able to walk on the water anymore because he stopped trusting in Jesus and looking to him, and he is focusing more on how the situation seems to him. And so that can often be us, I think. But we've got to keep ourselves close to Jesus, looking to him, trusting what he says. Now, how do we do this? How do we keep ourselves close to him? We can do that by bringing these really hard situations to him, by praying, by saying, God, this thing is really hard. Today I'm feeling like this. I'm feeling rubbish. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling like I'm not good enough for this thing. I'm feeling anxious. And we can bring this stuff to him and ask him to change it and to bring peace to our hearts in the middle of that crazy hard situation. And we can read God's promises in the Bible, the things that he says about us. We can pray with people, we can meet up with people, tell them how we are, and bring that stuff to Jesus together. I'd encourage you so much to do these things when life is hard, to keep yourself close to Jesus, to fix your eyes on him, and to trust him. And another part of that for some of us is that to fix our eyes on Jesus, it means not being distracted by the things around us, like we see Peter was in that story. Because there is just so much stuff in life that is like competing for our time, whether it's like TV, social media, football, sport, relationships. There's so much stuff that can be really distracting in life. And lots of this stuff, at the end of the day, it can fill up our time, but it's just really not that important. It's not that it's all bad, but it's just that it distracts us from what is important, and from trusting in God, and from keeping our eyes on him and what is true when stuff is really hard. And I think maybe for some of you, it might be a real challenge to think about the things that you focus on in life, and maybe that getting rid of some of those things and focusing more on Jesus and on the way that you might think he wants you to live, maybe the people he wants you to spend time with, to care for, the things he wants you to spend your time doing, and to get rid of some of those distractions. And I bet that if you do that, if you find yourselves fixing your eyes on Jesus, you'll find that a lot of those distractions, you don't have to worry about them. That he gives you the courage and gives you the peace that you need, so that when situations are hard, maybe it feels like you care about things that other people don't care about, that you are going like against the tide, that actually you'll find that you're less worried, and that Jesus is using you for really, really good things. I heard a really cool story, which I read it in a book a few weeks ago, about a guy quite a long time ago now, like 30-40 years ago, who was smuggling Bibles into countries in Eastern Europe where you weren't allowed to read the Bible or to talk about Jesus, because people didn't want anyone to know about Christianity and about the faith and about Jesus. And he was smuggling Bibles in this van, and he had certain places he could hide loads and loads of Bibles in the van. And he talks about a time where he got to like a border checkpoint, and the guards were gonna check through his whole van, and like if they found a Bible, they would have like thrown him straight in prison or worse right then. But in that moment, he talks about how he was able to fix his eyes on Jesus and trust him, that even though he said, yeah, there's a chance they might find these Bibles and I might go in prison, actually, Jesus, I am trusting you. You have, brought me to this place where I'm doing this for you, and because I love the people in this country who need to get their hands on the Bible and hear about you, he was able to be really peaceful in that moment. And actually in the story, it's amazing and miraculous, and the guards never find the hidden Bibles, and he gets to go on through and take them into that country. And I love that story so much, because you can just see that in a situation which is probably like scarier and more real than most of us have been in, he was able to trust God, and it made it like Peter when he was able to step out on the water in the middle of a storm and not be afraid and just look at his saviour, his friend Jesus. And so that is my prayer for us, that we would be able to do that more and more in the tough situations that come to us. We'd be able to fix our eyes on Jesus.